Barry is the best bad show that I've ever seen. That or it's the worst good show. Honestly, I don't know what to think about Barry. Right now, I'm just impressed that Bill Hader is this good at directing. At times, I was floored by the stuff that was happening in the show. But at other times, I was pretty confident that the writers were just making it up as they went along. Or at least for the last 2 seasons. Because in the first 2 seasons, there seemed to be a very tangible thread that all of the show's events were following. It was about Barry, a misunderstood killer trying to redeem himself and leave his ugly past behind him. And everything happening in the show fit very neatly into that package. The way the mob stuff and Fugues kept forcing him back in, the way that tied into the acting school with Gene and Janice Moss, and even how it fit into his relationship with Sally.
Whatever you did tonight to get to that place, that's your new process, okay? All you have to do is do that every time.
But around season 3, I started noticing weird writing decisions that made the show feel kind of stupid. And don't get me wrong, the show uses stupidity intentionally to be very funny. But in season 3, it started to feel like they were making stupid decisions for the sake of forcing the plot forward. The most obvious example is probably Fugues. He basically has no place in the plot that justifies his character being around. Like once they made him happy with his Chechen goat life and his super hot wife, they should have just written him out of the show. I mean, come on, look at her. And look at him. And he has goats? But instead, they have him storm back into Barry's life because he's jealous of Gene. I get that it was supposed to be silly on purpose, but to me, it just came off as lazy instead of funny. Because from that point on, a major plot point of the show is essentially motivated by the fact that Fugues would choose to put himself in danger of... just because he's just because he... Jesus, can I just say the damn line? Just because he's jealous. And I mean, just look at her. And goats? Pretty much everything that happens with Fugues from this point on makes him feel more like a plot development tool than an actual character. And that's the type of thing that happens a lot in the last 2 seasons of Barry. We get a character who only exists to move the plot forward in a certain way, and then they disappear. There's the daughter actress from Joplin, Elena, Albert. Albert is honestly probably the most ridiculous example on this list. He pops up into the show out of nowhere just to end up having one single conversation with Barry and then vanishes into thin air, never to be seen again. Easily the most useless character to ever get that much screen time in the whole series. And these kinds of writing decisions just seem to get worse as the show concludes. The whole time skip thing felt forced and like it broke up the pacing of the show for no real reason. And as a result, the way things do finally wrap up in the very end feels rushed. Now I can hear your responses already. You're saying, this is a comedy, it's not meant to be taken that seriously. And look, I'll come out and say it. You might be 100% right. I honestly don't know, because at times the show felt like it was supposed to be just a comedy, but then at other times it felt like it was supposed to be so much more. The show acted like it was a drama half the time, and it did a pretty damn good job of it. The acting, the directing, the way it handled topics like abuse and trauma. I thought the social commentary of Barry was so poignant at times that it left me stunned. The way they handled Sally's relationship with abuse was almost always a highlight of the show for me, because it was so well written and performed. And even in season 4, when they have that moment where her acting class calls the Kusanov method abusive.
What you just witnessed Kristen do is the backbone of this class.
That was abusive.
Like, that was awesome. We spend the first 2 seasons glorifying his acting method because we see him as a sort of washed up genius. But then the show itself does a complete 180 on our perceptions with that one single moment. It's extremely self-aware and it catches you off guard in the best way possible. And because the show is filled with moments like that, it's easy to look at it through the lens of a drama instead of a comedy. So what ended up happening to me was that as I was watching the final season, I started having this internal debate on whether or not the show was a full-on comedy or not. Now, the wacky storyline progression is part of the comedy or just lazy writing. Because one enhances the comedy, but the other takes away from the drama. So if it is a dramedy, then it's kind of unbalanced. And that's when I realized that it's not a drama or a comedy. Barry feels like it's 2 shows in one. It's a comedy and it's a drama. Because to me, it doesn't blend things in a way that makes it feel like a single cohesive show. And that's not exactly helped by the fact that in season 4, we would literally get full episodes that were nothing but comedy, followed by full episodes that had no comedy. It's distinctly 2 different shows to me, and one of those shows is better than the other. Also, am I crazy, or was that time skip stuff a satire of Better Call Saul? I mean, the shots even looked like a Vince Gilligan show at times. But what do I know? I'm just some fat to watch the show while eating cereal out of a salad bowl. Now, I'm fully willing to admit that I'm probably just overthinking it, and this show is probably not that deep. But I've done so much overthinking now that I've overthought my overthinking, which has led me to a radical new conclusion so stupid that I actually think the show is genius now. The show's identity crisis is on purpose. Barry intentionally blurs the line between comedy and drama so much because they want it to be impossible to classify. It exists outside the genre labels we have for TV shows, and that allows the team behind the show to take things in a direction that you would never expect without it ever feeling out of place, because nothing really feels in place either. Now, I don't know if that's actually what the writers of Barry were intending, or if that's just the weed cookies talking, but honestly, I don't care. I like this interpretation because it makes me like the show more. And if there's anything I've learned about art over the years, it's that the only opinion that should matter is your own. If someone hates Barry and has an Lemon level of analysis to justify their opinion, cool. And if someone loves the show and has a 3-hour video on why it's good, still cool. At the end of the day, what matters to me is that Barry kept me interested from beginning to end, and it left me with a lasting impression. The best moments of the show consistently made up for the weak parts, and it genuinely got me thinking about topics like abuse and about the show itself as a piece of art. And the fact that I didn't know how to perceive the show by the end, and that as a result it gave me something to think about and discuss with my friends, just made me like the show more. Is it a good show? I don't know, but I liked it. And what I can say for sure is, there's nothing else like it. Goats?